Really nice. Blah blah blah. No, blah. Definitely this one. Hi, Joe here. Now today I want to give you a recipe for olive bread or olive sticks, although I don't like to say olive sticks because I think it makes you think of something snappy, crispy like a grissini. These are more like a mini baguette. Perfect just as a snack or with aperitif or serve with a cheese course, or if you bake a whole Camembert, drizzle it with a bit of honey and dip these in it, it's absolutely delicious. Check it out on my Instagram feed. I've posted it quite a few times because it's a family favourite. Also, Christmas is coming, so these would be perfect with if you're having friends around for drinks. Just serve some of these with it. Very nice. You're going to need 500 grams of strong white bread flour, 200 or 300 grams of black olives. If you can get the dried ones, all the better. These ones actually aren't, but what I did is I pitted them, put them on a baking tray into a low oven at 50 degrees for about half an hour, just to drive off some of that moisture and intensify the flavour. 9 grams of salt, a little bit lower than I'd normally use for half a kilo of flour, but the olives are salty, so we'll just take that down a bit. 8 grams of yeast, which is about a gram up of what I normally use for 500 grams, but that is because we've got olives in it, olive oil, all things that are going to retard the bread, stop it puffing up so much. So just upping the yeast a little bit will just give us that boost. 2 or 3 sprigs of fresh rosemary, love this stuff, so I've gone for 3 and a little bit actually. And then 400 millilitres of water. Again, I've used slightly warm water. I know people have been saying use cold water and adjust your timings accordingly if it's not puffing up. That's all very well, but if you waited 2 hours for it to puff up and it hasn't yet and you've got to wait another 2 hours, you're up to kind of 4 hours then, and most people are going to lose patience by then. Either chuck it all in or just bake it and they're going to come out hard and tough and it's not going to be great. So a little bit of warm water, around 25 to 30 degrees if that helps. And that will just help it all get going, and you should find you've got nice puffy dough in about an hour, hour and a half. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to mix all this in a KitchenAid because we're around 80% hydration, so it's going to be quite a wet, sticky dough. And also, I like to put the olives in the dough in the mixer and blend them for a couple of minutes, because that just breaks them up a little bit, distributes them through the dough, almost colours the dough like a little grey, blacky colour, so you get the flavour of the olive all the way through the bread, not just in the actual olives. So we need our 500 grams of bread flour, the 9 grams of salt, the 8 grams of yeast, into the mixer on a low speed, and then add our water. That can all go in. Whilst that's mixing, we'll just chop up our rosemary, so just pull the leaves off of the sticks. There we go, a few extra there. And just chop it up nice and fine. Got a pretty teeny chopping board here, but something like that. Doesn't have to be too fine. It's nice to keep these a bit rustic. So we'll let that mix for a good 5 minutes. We want to develop the gluten here and turn this into a dough before we add our olive oil, because things like oils, they all stop gluten formation. So get the bread dough made, then we'll add the oil, the herbs and the olives. Okay, so that's been about 5 minutes. We'll add our olive oil. Now you want a couple of tablespoons, or basically a good glug. If you're going to weigh it, I think you're looking at around 50 or 60 grams. But like I say, just a good old drizzle of extra virgin olive oil. Again, we'll turn it onto a low speed so we don't slosh this everywhere. We'll let that incorporate. Whilst that's incorporating, we can add our chopped rosemary. There we go. Let that incorporate for a couple of minutes, and then we'll do the olives for a couple of minutes more after that. Okay, that's been a couple of minutes. You can see we've got a nice stretchy dough, quite wet. We'll add our olives, and now mix that for a minute or 2 minutes. You don't want to go too long to totally smash up the olives, but I like them to be broken up in there a little bit. Okay, that's been about a minute. That's incorporated. Scrape that off the dough hook. And what we'll do is we'll tip this out so you can see what it looks like. Just shape it up a little bit and then back in the bowl to prove. So a little bit of flour. Scrape that out. So you can see pretty sticky. Turn that over a few times. It should come together in a bit of a ball. There we go. And that we'll put back in the bowl. There we go. So we'll leave that in there for about an hour, 2 hours, cover it with some cling film or just a tea towel, and then we'll come back, shape it and bake it. Okay, it's been about 90 minutes and dough's puffed up nicely. So now we can tip this out on here. We're not going to knock it back. These are kind of rustic little sticks, so we want to keep them with nice big air pockets inside, so we won't knock it back. We need quite a well floured surface because the dough is pretty sticky. So a good bit of flour. We're going to have flour underneath, we'll flour on top before we cut it. Then once we slice them up, you get some nice effects with the white flour underneath and then the non-flour bits on. So we tip this out. Again, try not to break it up too much. Just use the dough scraper to get it out. There we go. Just a bit there. Sprinkle some flour on top so it's not too sticky. And then we want to get it into kind of a rectangle because we're going to slice it up. So just stretch it around. We kind of want it longer than it is wide. We'll make these that way. Okay, that's nice. Now I've got 2 trays here lined with baking parchment. Have them on the side ready. And then you just want to cut these up into kind of like inch strips. So down there, and then so they're very rustic, and it's nice to give them just a little twist maybe, and that way you're going to get sort of, you know, like when you slash a loaf, you'll get the white with the flour, then you'll get the open cut, white, open cut, just makes them look a bit more interesting. Put them on your tray about 1 inch apart, and that'll come up nicely. There's another one. And the last one. There we go, so we've got 12, look like that, very rustic, not shaped, just as straight as possible, evenly spaced. If you want to create a bit more room between them, you can just use your scraper just to move them around. And now, cover them with a tea towel, leave them to prove for, they're only going to need about half an hour because like I say, we haven't knocked them back, so we've still got a good amount of air in there. We give them half an hour just for the cut size to re-expand. And then we need to bake them at quite hot. I would put the oven to full blast whilst you heat it up for a good 10 to 15 minutes. Then turn it down to about 220 and bake these for 12 to 15 minutes depending how big you've cut them. These ones probably will be 12 to 15 because I've done them quite big. And that's it. Okay, so there we go. The finished result. I baked these at 240 in the end for 18 minutes. I wanted to get a bit of colour on them, and these two were quite big. If you're having them for snacks or nibbles, you kind of want to be aiming for this kind of size. Makes a nice little treat. But you can see a good bit of colour, nice and crispy, soft on the inside, packed full of olives, delicious with a glass of wine. These ones, the bigger ones, like I say, if you're serving them with a cheese course, that would be perfect. You can almost cut that open like a baguette, serve that with your cheese. Now we're coming up to Christmas. I'll try and do a few videos with things like fougasse, fruit loaves, things that are a little bit festive and will be a nice treat over the Christmas period. If there's anything you'd like me to have a go at, leave a comment. If it's something I've baked before I know I can do, I'll give it a go and show you how I do it. In the meantime, please subscribe or like the video, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!